The struggle for women's rights in Iran is not only about gender oppression, but also deeply intertwined with the country's ethnic and economic divides. Non-Persian women face unique challenges, bearing the weight of both patriarchal repression and systemic marginalization. These women are not only oppressed because of their gender, but also because of their ethnic identities, economic status, and geographic isolation, which severely limits their access to opportunities. The cry of "Woman, Life, Freedom" has echoed throughout Iran, a slogan that captures the essence of the movement. Women fighting for their basic rights to live freely in a society that values their autonomy, regardless of their gender, ethnicity, or economic background. Reza Shah Pahlavi's modernization policies in the early 20th century brought significant changes to women's rights, particularly in urban, Persian-majority cities like Tehran. These reforms included the 1936 ban on the hijab, symbolizing a shift towards secularism and westernization. However, these policies were focused almost exclusively on the Persian urban centers, leaving rural and non-Persian regions, such as South Azerbaijan, Baluchistan, Al-Ahvaz, and other regions, untouched. For women in these areas, the promise of modernization never materialized. The state's centralization of power and Persian nationalism excluded ethnic minorities from economic opportunities and social reforms. Non-Persian women were left to contend with both deeply ingrained patriarchal norms and a state that ignored their existence. Economic disparities compounded their struggles as rural regions remained impoverished and underdeveloped, with little access to education, healthcare, or meaningful employment. Under Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the modernization agenda continued with the White Revolution in the 1960s, bringing reforms aimed at transforming Iran into a modern state. Women in urban, Persian-majority regions benefited from these changes, gaining access to education, labor rights, and political participation. However, these benefits remained out of reach for non-Persian women in rural, economically disadvantaged regions. Land reforms and infrastructure projects were concentrated in Persian-majority areas, further deepening the economic divide. Non-Persian women were largely confined to traditional roles and excluded from the economic advancements enjoyed by their Persian counterparts. In these marginalized regions, patriarchal norms were further entrenched by economic deprivation, leaving women without the means to challenge their subjugation.
Ayatollah Khomeini returns to a country teetering on the brink of civil war. For the last 7 days, Tehran and other cities have seen violent clashes between troops and demonstrators demanding Khomeini's return.
As a woman, biologically, you are made to give life. By being armed, you have the ability to take life.
Right.
What do you feel about this? Is there a dilemma in your mind?
No, this is an honor for us to kill whoever kills people, who get life from other people. We don't kill our brothers and sisters. We kill those enemies, those people who are human enemies.
But who decides who is the enemy?
Who decides? we can decide by their behavior, by what they are doing.
The 1979 Islamic Revolution marked a dramatic shift in women's rights, reversing many of the gains made under the Pahlavi dynasty. The new Islamic Republic implemented a strict interpretation of Islamic law, reintroducing the compulsory hijab and reinforcing conservative gender norms. Women's public roles were severely restricted, and patriarchal control over women's bodies and behavior became institutionalized. For non-Persian women, the Islamic Republic's policies exacerbated existing inequalities. Economic and social marginalization continued, with rural, non-Persian regions left underdeveloped and neglected by the state. Women in these areas, already disadvantaged by poverty and ethnic discrimination, faced even greater oppression under the new regime. The state's focus on Persian identity and centralization of power left non-Persian women on the margins, unable to access the resources needed to improve their lives. In non-Persian regions, the intersection of gender, ethnicity, and economic inequality creates a deeply entrenched hierarchy. Women in these areas are governed by both the patriarchal structures within their communities and the state's systemic neglect. Economic opportunities are scarce, and women's labor, both in the home and in the informal economy, is undervalued and unrewarded. Without access to education, healthcare, or employment, non-Persian women are largely confined to traditional domestic roles, dependent on male relatives for economic survival. These patriarchal norms, reinforced by the state's economic neglect, leave women powerless to challenge their subordination. The wealth generated by modernization remains concentrated in Persian-majority urban centers, while non-Persian regions, especially rural areas, are left impoverished and excluded from economic development projects. The slogan, "Woman, Life, Freedom," has become the rallying cry for women across Iran. Still, it carries particular weight for non-Persian women who have long been excluded from the benefits of both modernization and political change. Their fight for equality is not just a fight against patriarchal norms, but also against a state that has historically ignored their existence. To address the deep-seated inequalities faced by non-Persian women, both gender and ethnic inequities must be tackled simultaneously. Legal, economic, and social reforms are urgently needed to uplift non-Persian women, ensuring their access to education, healthcare, and employment. Economic empowerment through targeted development programs, microfinance initiatives, and job training is crucial for breaking the cycle of poverty that has kept non-Persian women dependent on patriarchal systems. Education plays a key role in empowering women. Non-Persian women must have access to quality education in their languages, allowing them to participate fully in society. By investing in the education of women in marginalized regions, the Iranian state can begin to dismantle the structures of inequality that have kept them impoverished and dependent. Social reforms are also necessary to challenge the patriarchal norms that dominate non-Persian regions. Women's rights organizations, particularly those led by non-Persian women, must be supported to advocate for gender equality within their communities. Creating spaces for women to lead the fight for their rights is essential for addressing the intersecting oppressions of gender, ethnicity, and economic inequality.